Good morning. Good morning. Back at the virtual water cooler with two of my favorite people, Cassidy and Dalia. If you've missed talking to them before, they're phenomenal women in tech with busy, demanding schedules, and they were absolutely the perfect people to have today's conversation with. I'm going to find the little banner with a question so that we can show everybody. Here's a question that came in that we're tackling on the water cooler. Obviously a pre-COVID question because who was jumping on trains, sitting next to strangers to go to an event that wasn't like, anyway, great question, because it's not just necessarily about living far from a location where there's stuff going on. It's how we choose to spend our time and how we do this. So you're both nodding away.
I'm ready for this.
You know what? You're ready for it. You go for it, Cassidy. Thoughts?
So first of all, it is a pandemic, but something that has come out of the pandemic is the fact that we are kind of a remote first world now. And granted, there's an element of bias because I literally work at a company called Remote that helps people get remote jobs and people hire remote workers. But if you don't want to schmooze 250 miles away, you don't have to. You could smooze from the comfort of your own home. You don't even have to schmooze. You could just have a coffee chat, contact people online. None of us live close to each other, but we've talked to each other twice in the past couple months. It's something that you can do with the power of technology. We have this available where it might be awkward to kind of cold call via email or social media or something, but you never know what could happen if you just reach out and ask someone if they want to have a chat. And also, you can be the change you want to see in your community. If you want to have those kinds of face-to-face business connections and stuff, you could either go to existing meetups or start one in your community. And I'm sure plenty of people will be interested.
But you know, you hit on something. It could be awkward to reach out and ask someone for a coffee date. Like, how many times have we been standing around at a conference, like, you know, Grace Hopper or whatever, and you're having that, hi, you know, weird awkwardness in person. So treat the virtual like the real, all that kind of stuff. Dalia, you know, we're recording this. It's Ramadan. You've got to make a whole lot of decisions on how and when you choose to do things. And you chose to be here exerting a whole lot of energy. And I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, for me, you know, there's a lot of factors. So of course, just like Cassidy said, it is a pandemic. Some people are just not comfortable coming on person, even though other people are. And we've got to be conscious of that and like realize that that's, you know, that comes first. Safety comes first. For me, I'm fasting right now and, you know, I can't drink water or eat. So anything that's going to exert a lot of energy needs to have a really good reason for it. I'm actually, my team is planning an in-person event in a couple weeks. And I had to make a decision, should I go or not, given that I'm going to be fasting, all that stuff. But one of the reasons that I like to meet people in person is that I think there is an element of established trust that you get when you meet someone in person, and it really helps relationships. So for me, I said, you know, that is worth it for me. If it was just kind of another conference, I would have probably said no. But if it's I'm meeting my team for the first time, I hadn't met any of them before, and I think this would be good for our relationship, then I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I was, before this episode, I was kind of reading around, curious what other people thought. And I ran across a Harvard Business Review article about when do you do it online, when do you do it offline. And one of the things they mention is if it's a relationship-based, you know, meeting, that will benefit from in person. But if it's a task-based, then virtual is just fine. And I completely agree with that, because I can collaborate even better virtually because I have two screens. I can have you know, your picture on the right and like the documents on the left, and we can review the code together and like have a good time. And that's fine. But if it's relationship based, I think it can really benefit from being in person. And one thing, before the pandemic, I was actually leading a team. Half of us was in Rochester, and half of us it was in Austin, Texas. And the one of the folks that I mentored me was like, Dalia, I think you would really benefit from seeing your team in person, the folks that don't work locally with you. And I ended up doing that on my own dime because there was no business need for it. And I thought afterwards that they opened up more, they were more trusting, they felt like I feel like our relationship grew. I think it would have been fine if I didn't go, but I think that it really helped.
Well, I'd say sometimes you get the nuances and all the rest of it. And to this, I want to say this reader question. So I don't know if they're an entrepreneur. They said the closest business up. So let's assume maybe they're an entrepreneur. But this is also to get to both of your points and where Cassidy started. This is where virtual networking is really great. So you could find the meetups, the events, the things that are happening virtually to see how that business community engages online, or what maybe this 250-mile train ride, for an event or an interaction, like how is this person otherwise engaging them in a digital format to let you know are they going to be generous? Are they going to be helpful, right? Like just jumping on, I don't care if it's a train, a walk, or, a subway ride. In my scenario, if it's going to be something that is going to be with someone who is not going to, like, if I can otherwise find out like their generosity, like kind of thermometer, right, or level beforehand, why, if I can do it in a phone call, why would I want to go and waste my 15 minutes or 250-mile train ride in that scenario? Thoughts?
Yeah. It reminds me of when I met my team when I worked at Netlify for the first time, where that team, we had gotten very close virtually and stuff. We worked together in the pandemic, and we always had our virtual coffee chats and virtual co-working chats and stuff like that, where we would just have a Zoom call and hang out with each other. And when we did ultimately meet in person, it was something that was really exciting for all of us because we did already have an established relationship, and we were just like, oh, it's going to be so fun because I know that this person is silly, this person is this, I wonder how tall that person is. And it was very real thing. I'm a lot taller than a lot of my team. Anyway, it was so fun getting to see them because we were able to look forward to it, and we weren't just like, oh, well, that person's boring, so I don't know if it'll be as fun to meet them. Like we were very, very excited about that, and we saw each other in person. We hugged for the first time, and it was really cool, and we were able to do that. And there have definitely been some people where they suggest, hey, why don't we meet up somewhere in downtown Chicago, or if I'm in another city, they want to meet up somewhere, and I'll say, oh, well, life is a little hectic. Let's have a coffee chat on a virtual call. And I'm so glad I started virtual because some people are as interesting as toast. And
Yes.
and I mean that with all the love in the world. I love a good slice of toast. But if you want to travel for that, you want to be intentional about your time.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about, the two of you, when you think back to earlier, you're like, Dalia is like, I'm laughing, but I'm really not appreciating this.
I'm like, I hope I'm more interesting than toast.
No, you're so much more interesting than toast, I promise.
She's here with us. We have to be more interesting. We're either more interesting than toast, or she wanted to insult us to our faces. One of the
Get the hint, ladies.
So I'm thinking back, like earlier in your careers, whereas starting out, probably as students and starting out, people were probably tossing all sorts of things, saying, oh, this would be good for your career, this would be good for your career, this would be good for your career, kind of thing, in terms of attending. And thinking of this person's question, this is where I kind of step back and think, what, this is where you have an opportunity to sort of pre-network attending an event, where you can talk to other people and say, why do you think I should go to this? Like, tell me about this community. Why this meetup versus this meetup? Why this business organization versus all these others I've heard about? Like how you can get information so that you're making sort of a schmoozy coffee date. You're making that investment before you've even purchased your train ticket, so to speak. Dalia.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because even right now I'm getting to know the team and stuff virtually, and I'm also learning what everyone is working on and deciding, hey, who I have limited amount of time to be there. Who is going to be the most important people to connect with, not just because I want to network, but also for business reasons. So that's the other part of that question is, what's going to be what are the stakes for this meeting? If you're trying to make a deal, or if this relationship is going to end in you making sales, or like a career progression or career growth, or like someone that is gonna get you where you need to go, and the stakes are higher, I think it's really good to consider doing it in person, because we've said this before, most communication is nonverbal, and that includes a lot of our bodies. You're not seeing my legs right now, you don't see if I'm nervous, and a lot of times
see if I'm wearing pants or not.
Exactly. Like, is it pajamas? Do they have like emojis on them? I do have pajama pants that have emojis on them. But you don't, there's an aspect of in person that you don't get otherwise, but your time is valuable. You can't be meeting everyone and just kind of spending all your time meeting with different people that are really not advancing your career. And that goes back to Kelly's book on being intentional about the network that you're holding, or you have, and the people you want to surround yourself with. Not just because you want something out of them, but it's also like it helps to have people around you that lift you up and are going to be great for your mental health.
Oh yeah, mental health is a big part. Big part.
Burnt out so hard when I was younger, just because I was saying yes to everything, where because everybody said, oh, this would be good for you, oh, this might be a good thing, I was just like, yes, I am taking charge of my career by just saying yes to life. I was not saying yes to life. I was saying yes to only work and no life, and working myself to the point where I just kind of broke down a lot, where I couldn't handle anything because I was working constantly. And I think that's where, again, you have to assess your intentions and what you want, what you don't want in your career, and really figure out, is this actually good for my career, or is this just something I feel like I should be doing?
Yeah.
Well, and depending on who says it, and then go ahead, Dalia, because it's like, you have someone who's in authority says you should do this, or someone you respect, a mentor or whatever else, someone else in the business community whose, achievements you value, or, appreciate, and then they tell you to do this, and you're like, oh, okay, they must think it's a good idea. But that's when it's like, hit, like the Staples pause button, hit that pause button, pause, and sort of say, tell me more. Anyway, Dalia.
So I am curious, because I'm talking to a lot of my friends that, are being told you've got to go back to the office, but you could do hybrid. And I'm noticing that the people that are earlier in their career want to go into the office, want to make those connections, because you don't have access to folks with seniority. And I recognize that from my time when I was starting my career. The mentors I've had were people that kind of I saw around, and I was like, oh, I could kind of go bug them. But there's kind of not equivalent of that, because everyone looks the same, and you don't know, like, who should you be like tapping and saying, hey, could we go on a walk, or could I grab a room with you and have a meeting? So I noticed that the folks that are earlier in the career are craving that, but the folks that are later are not coming in because they don't get as much from being in the office, and they get distracted all the time. So they can't really do their job the way they'd like to. So I'm curious what y'all are what would you say to both sets of folks that are earlier in their career, later in their career? When is it worth it to go into the office?
I think it all kind of comes down to first of all, how do you want to be contacted, and how do you want to be a resource for people, especially for the leadership side of things? You can make yourself available to the more junior folks in your company if you're intentional about it. Where, like, for example, at my company and at other companies, I've seen people say, like, okay, this is going to be my dedicated office hours. I'll make sure to post about it on Slack, and I'll just leave a Zoom room open so anybody can come in if they want to just hang out. Otherwise, I'm going to be doing whatever. And they keep it casual, but it gives people an opportunity to get a little bit of face time. There are a lot of people that don't do that. And so if someone wants to approach them, they're like, hey, it would be cool if we could converse at some point. Like it's nerve-wracking. And so I do think both in person and online, being able to show that you're available to help people in any way, I think that's really, really important on the leadership side of things.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Cassidy. Leaders need to step up. There is that element on that. So here's two things that I think of, and I'm so glad you raised this, Dalia. Is one, for a junior person, like, watch and see what people are doing. Like, who is coming into the office, when they're coming into the office. Maybe you've decided your 3 days, and maybe these other people are coming in on other days. Like, shake it up, because you may have to get out of your own pattern to cross paths with the leadership, because they're coming in on Mondays, but you don't like to come in on Mondays. Like, come in on a Monday, right? When you are in and there's people you don't know, take the initiative. Hey, I see you're also a Tuesday person at the office. I don't know you. This is who I am. They may not be introducing themselves to you, because guess what? They're equally scared and afraid of talking to other people. And I'm not saying this in a pandemic way. I'm just saying this as reality. When I used to organize these new associate receptions when I was in law firm management, I used to have to walk the floors and grab all the partners by, like, the scruff of the neck, like all these senior partners, and say, get your butt up to the reception. But, there's these new people. I'm like, you hired these new people to make your lives easier, right? And I would have the same conversation with the new associates. I said, you know what, the partners, they're going to come together, and they're all going to stand in little pack, like scared school children at a new school in the schoolyard. They're equally, moronic and scared about this. So don't think, oh, gee, those partners know everything on networking. They don't, right? So go up to someone and just say, we seem to be the people who like to come in at Tuesdays. This is who I am. This is the group I'm in. Nice to meet you. That's all you have to do. Maybe you'll find out it's the CEO of the company. I mean, like, who knows? With my third thought is, Dalia is like, oh, Jesus, we opened the floodgates.
No, I love it. Love it. I love your thoughts. Those are really good. Like, I think this is great advice for people that are watching and they don't know what to do with this new hybrid.
Yeah. And then with the sort of some of these leaders you do want to meet, this is where I'm like, email them and tell them what you would like to chat with them about. Hey, your name keeps coming up as someone I should speak to. Here's who I am, a new person. What I'd really love to speak to you on is X. Like, find something like really specific, right? Like, the past 2 projects I'm on, everyone says you're the person who knows about X. I've been wondering about Y. Any chance I could grab some time with you to talk about this? If they suggest a virtual meeting, here would be my sneaky peek thing. I would schedule it on a day that you're in the office and you can see that office background.
Sneaky.
Oh, yeah, baby, right? And then the person's like, are you in the office? Yes, I am. I do come in the office some days, right?
Which office do you sit at?
Where do you sit? Well, that person may say, well, I haven't been coming into the office, but I know so-and-so is, and they equally know about this. Let me text that. Like, you know what? It might open up more things than, all right, I'm in my box at home with a question. Like, it gives an extra spark of a conversation. And also, it gives that social signaling of FaceTime that Cassidy mentioned, which is really critical early in your career.
Mm-hmm.
It's about dedication. Anyway, thoughts?
I agree completely. And it is hard when, I think right now in particular, it's so difficult because people are nervous about going back in. Is there another wave coming? We'll find out soon enough. Like it's a very weird dynamic right now. But once COVID does let up, and once people are figuring out that hybrid model, this is what you have to consider, because some people really do care about that face-to-face, depending on the industry you're in. Like if you're here in sales, you have to have some of that face time, because that could make or break the business that you're working on. And honestly, for tech people too, there's sometimes where you'll see someone working on like a code review and they honestly act differently depending on who wrote the code, even though they shouldn't, because they just know people better, or they know how people think a little bit better. And so taking that effort to have these conversations, whether they're in the office or out of the office, but making that FaceTime is very important, even though it can be nerve-wracking.
Yeah. And I think looking at your network and figuring out the people in it that you really value those relationships with, and like trying to at least meet with them once in person. Like I think once, and then build on that, or before, like, meet online, and then once, like at least just meet with the people that you really care about a relationship with at least once. That way you're kind of solidifying that relationship a little bit better and building that trust and telling them, hey, I'm a real person. Like, and you can have those side things and they can learn about you. You can learn about them. Trying to do it at least once, it would be good, but don't feel like you need to do it on a regular basis. And you can definitely reevaluate, like just like Kelly said, like, if you're going into the office and you're not getting anything out of it, and like it's just not really doing it for you, then you reevaluate. Okay, why am I going in? What would be more helpful? Would it be more helpful to just go through these days instead of other days? Like, and looking at that. But we have to recognize that in person does have its benefits. Virtual definitely has its benefits because it's accessible and all those things, but in person does have that impact, but it doesn't need to be all the time. It could be every once in a while.
Right.
Not that I wouldn't like to see you two all the time, other than like this. I was going to say that, and Dalia mentioned my book earlier. I'm going to mention my book bonus that came out in January of this year, because Erin Cronican has a really great, I think for this question where we were asked, she had a really great example of how attending virtual, like information type events, content driven events with different communities and things that she was interested in, she could identify by who attended who she then wanted to reach out to and spend more time with. And then based on their geographic location, you could go from let's talk in the square to, oh, we're both in New York City. Oh, are you ever, this is where I'm located. This is where she's in the theater industry. This is where where I go for theater stuff. Are you ever in that neighborhood? And maybe we can cross paths there. But she started that, right, identifying who would be worth, actually sitting down and having, a coffee or whatever, or walk in the park, or what have you. Anything else you want to share this?
I have a fun little story. So just yesterday, I was invited to a coffee chat by a new employee at the company, and I saw it. I was just like, okay, I'll do it. I was like kind of emotionally tired.
Hope they're not watching this.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, it'll be fine. I should be social. And so I get on the call, and she immediately was saying, I am here because of you. And I was like, what? And it turns out she had heard about my company from my live stream. And even though she wasn't on the software engineering side, she had dropped out of computer science back in the day because she felt so isolated in tech, went on to a different kind of career, and then kind of found her way back into tech, and always liked watching women in tech live streams and stuff, and ended up discovering our company because of mine. And it was this lovely conversation where it turns out she also plays trumpet randomly. She likes board games, and we were able to just chat about this thing that we never would have talked about any of this if it weren't for just kind of putting yourself out there and making yourself available to people. And I'm not trying to like toot my own horn.
But
I'm
you
just trying to say like,
toot your own trumpet, baby. Toot your own trumpet, baby. But and
it was two-way, where it was not only like I was saying like, hey, this is a cool company, blah, blah, but she also made the initiative to reach out to me too. And I think that having those kinds of interactions can be challenging sometimes, especially when you're tired from Zoom fatigue and all that. But it's so worth it because now I'm just like, man, I want to talk to her again. She was so interesting to talk to.
Yeah, and then it's also like if it was limited to local, she would have never had that opportunity. So
Right.
it's awesome that she was able to connect with you and have that coffee chat, because pre-pandemic people weren't as open about just kind of hopping on a call and turning on their cameras.
Right.
But now we have access to so many interesting people like you and Kelly and other women in tech that I've connected with that I wouldn't have thought to do it before the pandemic, because you only connect with the people that sit next to you, you know?
Right.
And the only thing I'd correct on that outreach is she should have led with, I'm an employee at remote, and the only reason I'm here is because of your live stream. Because you would never, my guess is, Cassidy, if she had led with that line, you would never have had a hesitation about saying yes. It would never have entered. It would never have entered your mind. So for those watching, I love Cassidy's story. I absolutely love it. But lead, like do your, like if that was the reason, or you did some research and Dalia has done something that you're like, oh my God, I really want to talk about it with that. I'll just see if she can get on a 15-minute, hey, your career looks interesting, Dalia. Can we get a call? You're going to be like, no. But if they led with, you did this, and this really intrigues me, you're going to be like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So exactly. See,
I've actually had a lot of people trying, like, you know, when you get the LinkedIn connections and there's no message. I got a LinkedIn connection and the message said, hey, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to talk to her about coding, because she's been coding for 4 years and she is on JavaScript now. Like it actually told me like why he wanted to talk to me. I was like, this is great. I'd love to meet your daughter. And we ended up talking last week, and I was like, this is perfect, because now I know why you wanted to connect to start out with, and you're giving me something to connect on before we even hop on the call. So +1 to Kelly's point, like try to lead with like, why are you choosing them? Are you cold calling a bunch of people, or do you actually recognize the value they're going to bring? And you're like saying, yeah, this time is going to be valuable for me, and I recognize it, and I'm going to show up.
Right.
Some people don't even show up.
It's almost like a human cover letter.
I love that. Well, we're going to end that on the human cover letter. Like, you know,
it's going to say, I'm more interested than toast.
Yeah, perfect.
You know
Booked the call.
You know what? Exactly. Do your research. I am more interesting than toast. Like someone put that in a subject line, I'd be like, I am so there for you. Oh my God. Ladies, this is always a pleasure. And I am so appreciative of both of you for coming to the water cooler. And I'm not allowed to have preferences or favorites, but I think you'll understand, Cassidy, I kind of got a favorite for Dalia today, given given that she has taken time out during Ramadan to do this with us and exert probably way more of her energy than she needed to for 28 minutes, 30 minutes.
Awesome.
Incredibly fair.
It's always awesome to be with you two. Like any reason, any topic, I'll be here.
We're talking about toast next time.
Yes, exactly.
So what? We're special recording post Ramadan. Bring your toast. We're gonna have a water cooler and toast conversation.
I'll bring sourdough.
Oh my God, you two. All right. Love you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great one.